Hey, what's going on, guys? Battle Nations Emperor here, back today with another video. And today we'll be focusing on the Battle Nations Navy. This is a request from a user, actually our first channel request. Thank you very much to the user who requested this video. They asked not to be shouted out, but I would like to thank them privately and here publicly, anonymously, of course. But yes, this is our first video request. Today we'll be reviewing the Naval factions, or the Naval guilds. This was a, actually, while there was a little bit of information about it, was not hard at all to research this, as there was only actually 2 Naval factions in 4.5 in the update that did the Navy. And unfortunately, this would be the last major update of Battle Nations before it would be shut down. However, despite some of the mixed feelings about it, there are definitely some people who very much love this update. There are some people who very much dislike this update. But for all the mixed emotions, it was a genuinely fun update, which I feel, whether you loved it or hated it, I think a lot of us missed out on, because even as somebody who was obsessed with Battle Nation, still actively playing it till the very end, I don't remember a lot of stuff in here. I remember it off playing it, but even less so than other Battle Nation stuff. Like, unlike boss strikes and various main missions where I actively remember and they're actively something I hold as a memory, this is a lot of stuff that just kind of sits in the corner of your mind. Like, for example, we'll get into it, but the Dreznok I photoshopped in here poorly, and right in the center of the screen, Captain Pike up there. We'll get into both of them momentarily, but just a lot of interesting stories. So without any further delay in the intro, let's jump right into it. And first, I just want to discuss, because I genuinely forgot this. Do you guys remember there were mixed matches? So, of course, there were naval matches, as you can see, where you would have the ships. But there were some matches where they would have tiles where, as you can see, the 2 tanks on the very far right and the very far left, those are ground tiles. You couldn't put ground troops there while everything else is sea tiles. And this was very rare within missions and very rare within the game, but I feel more battles like this where they had actually incorporated more land with the more combined combinations would have made naval engagements a lot more funner, especially because one of the biggest complaints I see to this day about the naval aspect of the game was the fact that it was so hard to build up a navy after focusing your entire gameplay on building an army. You have all these great, amazing land troops, and now you're introducing this new, completely different, not even faction, but completely different environment to the game where all of our previous troops don't work except airplanes. So unless you were really good at boss strikes or had a really good guild and I had a bunch of planes saved up, it was hard to go into Navy. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But again, for all of its negatives, this was a very fun update. It gave us a lot of new content, and it was a memorable end to the Battle Nation saga. But let's jump right into today's video topic. Of course, the 2 factions of the naval update, starting of course with the much bigger one and the main villain of the naval update. Here's their promotional art, the Sovereign Navy. Here's their emblems, their logo and their battle emblem, respectively. And what do we know about the Sovereign Navy? Well, we know a little bit. Here I have a little flashcard pulled up. The Sovereign Navy is a military faction of the Empire. The same Empire we are employed for, that we have the outpost for. They were part of the Imperial Navy that, for whatever reason, rebelled against the Empire and formed their own militant coalition. Their only current known objectives, currently only known goals, is to conquer Arteria. I hope I'm saying that right. The continent which Battle Nations takes place on, the continent of which the entire story plays on. So conquer all of the land around them, the story land, and to destroy the city, or the port city, sorry, the city of Port, which is a breakaway faction of their own faction, a rebellion within their own rebellion, if you will. But we'll get in a little bit more into Port City later on. But what to know about them for right now is that, what to know about them for right now is that they are a breakaway within the Sovereign Navy themselves, who tie into pretty much the entire story of the Navy. The entire naval story takes place around Port City and the interactions between Captain Pike, the Reef Bandits, who are the second faction we'll get into after the Sovereign Navy, and of course the Sovereign Navy themselves. So those 2 images I showed you, one of them, this gentleman right here, is the only NPC drawing who talks to us, who is a member of the Sovereign Navy. You can see their little emblem on his hat right there. And as you saw on the postcard, the second note, they are the owners of the Dreadnought, the most powerful and only big boss ship within Battle Nations. There was, of course, the Kraken and various other sea monsters, but this was like the first and really only big like boss ship, if you will. This was the boss fight for the Sovereign Navy. It was a refightable fight, meaning it was kind of like the Ancient Sentinel. You could fight it multiple times. Here are its stats from the Battle Nations wiki. As you can see right there, again, spawns anywhere between 3 to 8. It respawns anywhere between 3 to 8 days after being initially killed. And finally, the last fact we can see right here that I thought was interesting that you soldiers would like to know is that every time you killed it, it had a 5% chance of dropping the Ironclad battleship. The Ironclad battleship being a very strong, reasonably strong naval ship in its own right. Here's the stats for it. And again, no real complaints about the Ironclad battleship. Again, if you had nothing else, it was a perfect battleship. It worked wonders within your Navy. It was nothing to write home about. Its biggest complaint by far was the simple factor of it was extremely hard to get, considering the factor of not only did you have to take down the Dreadnought, but you only had a 5% chance every time of getting it. And then if you, of course, don't get it, the 1 out of 20 pool, you got to wait another 3 to 8 days to get another 1 in 25% chance pool. So while it was kind of hard to build up ironclads, especially if you wanted multiple of them, they were nevertheless a very solid unit. It was just very hard to acquire them early on. Of course, going on to continuing what else we know about the Sovereign Navy. The Sovereign Navy basically just reuses Imperial naval ships, but just with the enemy paint color. Pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it's not... You could argue that was lazy that they didn't, get their own unique designs and own unique ships, but it does make sense, especially since they are a rebellion within the Empire itself. So it does make sense that they would just have our units except enemy form. The one thing, though, that I will admit I don't like about the factor is not their army. Not their navy. Their navy, completely understandable. They're the Sovereign Navy. They're a naval breakaway faction. All of these naval troops, I'm perfectly fine with them having. What I am not fine with them having is this right here. They are given all of these aircraft right here. And as you can see, not all of them are amazing. I mean, we have the Hawker Hurricane in there and the ZR6. But we also have the Z2 Bomber and the Wild Boar in there. They got all of these helicopters for free. The enemy AI, the Sovereign AI. And it's kind of infuriating because some of these are tier 10 boss strike Aryans, some of the best airplanes in the game, and they're just over here handing them to the enemy like hotcakes. And heaven forbid you don't have any aircraft yourself, so you'll have no air support coverage while going in with your weak navy, having to go against some tier 10 airplanes. So it kind of a load of malarkey, if you ask me. It's kind of a load of bull. But it's nothing too crazy. I mean, it's nothing, nothing you're going to, quit the game over. But I just think it was kind of OP to give them all of these airplanes. Maybe a Hurricane here, maybe, 2, Thunderclouds, at near the end, right before, the Dreadnought, like mini boss fight. Sure. But you're going to give them Z2 bombers. That's way too... Z2 bombers and Wild Boars, that's just way too far for me, man. But, yes, they did get, Imperial aircraft and Imperial naval units. The exact type available to the player, just, of course, with the enemy coat of paint. And then, finally, the last bit of information about them, as I alluded to earlier. Due to their violent expansion, they mass murder of native people. They killed the people of the island. So you basically have the Empire, the guys we work for, who would come into these islands, just trade with them, set up negotiation deals with them, and lead by peace, if you will, more just through negotiation and diplomacy. The Sovereign Navy was able to expand so fast because they demanded complete subjugation, and if you didn't, they would kill you. So as you can imagine, a lot of native people not willing to immediately submit, especially to a hostile foreign power, were immediately killed. So due to this mass bloodshed and just mass murder of innocent native people, Captain Pike led a rebellion within the Sovereign Navy itself to grab a sizable group within the Sovereign Navy and lead them to establish the city of the port city, which would work as the main story arc and the main base for where all of the naval missions will take place. And it also functions as a small home for the Reef Bandits who normally would not have a home, and for the player to rest and build up their own navy. We have a few pictures of it. This is what Port City looked like within the game. This is a overview of it, of course, taken from the wiki. You don't think you could have zoomed out this much in the game. We can see right down here. Beautiful area. And, well, that will be just about all we know, will be just about all we know and have for the Sovereign Navy. We do have a little bit more to cover with the Reef Bandits. The Reef Bandits have very little information on them. Their entire wiki is, I think, 3 paragraphs, while the Sovereign Navy is like 10 plus. The Sovereign Navy has a good little bit of story to them, some of which I really didn't get into in case you guys really like this video, and instead of just focusing on the factions, we can do a full naval cover of the naval story if you guys would like that. Just let me know in the comments down below if that would be the case. But the Reef Bandits have much less information on them. They're a group of scavengers shrouded in mystery. Very little is known about them. The only person we've ever seen in-game is one of their chiefs. This is one of the in-game Bandit Reef Chiefs. He is one of their leaders. This is, again, the only image of a Reef Bandit we have shown to us in-game. One of the very few facts we do know about the Reef Bandits is that they once had a homeland, a scattering of islands. Unfortunately, the Sovereign Navy invaded and killed the vast majority of them, basically annihilating them as a people, took all of their islands and forced them out of their homelands to wander the open sea, basically as sea hobos, if you will. Very sad stuff. They would eventually find a home in Port City, where most of them can be found to this day. Pike, the leader of Port City, and Morgan, of course, our Lieutenant Morgan, would convince them to start rebuilding their culture in Port City and try to start making their home there. So later on into the missions, you do have missions where you are trying to convince the Reef Bandits to establish their home in Port City and rebuild the culture that was taken from them and slaughtered by the Sovereign Navy. Finally, I thought this was interesting. Within the wiki itself for the Reef Bandits, it's described that they are called the naval version of the Silver Wolves, which I did not realize that, but apparently it is because just like the Silver Wolves, who convert trucks into, garbage trucks into rocket launchers, and delivery trucks into SMG, shields, who basically, turn modern day transportation vehicles, modern day industrial vehicles, into weapons. The Reef Bandits do the same, except with naval equipment. They take regular, normal transportation vehicles, boats, fishing boats, and transform them into deadly naval units. The last bit, I did have these last 2 photos, so of course these are just the 2 photos of Port City we looked at beforehand, and this is an open view of Port City ocean. So that's their ocean, this is just their beach. This game had some amazing graphics. And that will just about do it for us today, guys. I would again like to thank the user who requested this. I would like to thank everybody who's watched this entire video. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to the channel if you are new. We don't really have anything planned on working on an overarching boss strike video. I just really want that one to be super good because of its boss strikes. I mean, come on. But nothing crazy in the pipe works. If you guys would like to see anything particular for tomorrow, please leave a second recommendation for a video for the channel down below. I would love to get to you. But that will truly just about do it for us today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a great rest of your day.